Hello, everybody. This is Dorcas Chandler at dorcasgazelle.com. I hope you all are having a wonderful day wherever you are around the world. I just had to come back because it's Father's Day weekend and I celebrate all fathers all over this world. Happy Father's Day. And the thought that came in my mind was a imperfect love. That's what came to me because when I think of my dad, um, he wasn't perfect, but man, did he have a big heart to love us. And sometimes we don't look at the things that people do for us out of love. We're always dealing with the failures and the flaws of people. And I remember as a little girl growing up, and I was afraid of dogs. And so when we would go somewhere where there was a dog, my dad, as a little girl, he would always pick me up. And I used to feel like I was on top of the world because my dad was so tall. And as we grew up and moved to California, um, things got a little bit different in our home because we were from North Carolina, and my mom and my dad, they would leave us with my grandmother and go to New York every weekend to work. My mom cleaned houses and my dad did maintenance work. We came up poor. And so we had to stay there with my grandmother, and I don't think none of us enjoyed it, but that was what we had to do. So when we moved to California, um, money was tight. Um, and my parents, they would always get in these arguments, and all of the arguments was really about money. And so my mom, when we moved to California, she found some places where she would go clean houses, and my dad was still a janitor. And I've told this story several times, but as time to pay the bills, they would always get in these big old arguments. And so me and my two sisters, it was three of us, we slept in one room, and my brother, he slept in the other room, and my parents slept on the other side of the house. And so in the mornings before my dad was going to work, him and my mom would seem to just get in these huge arguments, and um, they would wake me up. My two sisters, they would say, Dorcas, Dorcas, Dad is messing with Mom again. And I would jump up and I'd say, okay. And I would go out there in the middle of their argument, which I don't recommend this because this isn't the proper way to do it, but this is the way I did it. I would go out there and I would tell my dad, you better leave my mother alone. Leave Mom alone. And he would look down at me, and then he'd just walk out. And one time he went out to work with just a t-shirt on. And so I did this over and over and over during my childhood life because they would always call me, Dorcas, Dad is messing with Mom again. And I would always go out there and say, you better leave my mom alone. And that seemed to stop every single argument. Now, that's, like I said, that's not the proper way to do it. Two parents arguing or whatever, I don't recommend that a child do what I did. But I did what I did. And as I grew up and watched my parents, because both of them, they were pastors and they were ministers. They had a church. And so I would see these people. I would be sitting in the church and I would be looking at them talk about God and talk about how good Jesus was. And in my mind, in my childhood mind, I would ask God, I say, God, if you're that good, why are my parents fussing all the time over money? Could you give them some more money? Um, and so I used to sit in church. So as I grew up and almost a teenager, I said, when I grow up, I will never be in church because it doesn't work. And so that's what I thought. But I am in church and I love God and I love everything that I've went through as a child. But I'm talking about an imperfect love. Sometimes we're looking for perfection in human beings, and I don't believe that none of us are perfect in all of our ways. I've learned that as an adult. But so my parents raised us and they took care of us and took us to Jesus and taught us about the word and taught us how to respect people and places and things. And my father would say to me, if you ever mess up your name is all you got. They put moral fiber in us. And so they were training us the best that they could, but they had situations that they handled in an imperfect or improper way. And so as we grew up and seeing these things in our home, we begin to learn behaviors. We begin to learn that you have to fuss out your situation. We begin to see how to handle anger. And if you don't know how to handle anger, then a lot of times it comes out the wrong way. Because scripture tells us to be angry and sin not. So there's nothing wrong with being angry, but it's a way that you have to handle your anger. So as I grew up and as I didn't have to go to church no more, so I just went out there clubbing and partying and doing everything I wanted to do. And so my mom would tell my dad, you need to tell her she need to go to church. And he would always say, leave her alone, Alma. Leave her alone. And I got to know my dad in a different manner because they would always tell me, you're just like your dad. When they would say that, it was always about negative behaviors that my father had. But not many people, even today, they'll say, you're just like your father. Because maybe I got a mouth that I will say things that I shouldn't say. And I still do. But I'm working on it. So, and my father would just tell you whatever he needed to tell you. And so, and that's in me. And he would also look at you like you were crazy, or when he get mad, he would roll his eye. Everything that my father would do as a young child, me growing up, I have found out that most of those characteristics are in me. But this is what I want to say. Nobody came and said, you're just like your father. My father was very creative. My father, he knew how to do a lot of things. Not only did he know how to do things, but if he said he was going to do something, he was committed to it. And if he loved you, he loved you from the bottom of his heart. And if he seen you in need, he would help you the best that he could. Nobody told me those things. So a lot of times as children, as we grow up, our parents will talk about the negative side of parenting, whether it's the father or the mother, but they don't show us the good part of our parents. And both of my parents, they worked hard. They worked hard to raise us and to make sure that we had what we need. And I'm grateful for that. And so what I'm saying, and why did I want to come back and talk about fathers, is because fathers are the biggest part of this world, is a man loving his family. And it might not be the love that we think it ought to be. But every time that a father shows back up at his house after he leaves and go to work and come back to his family, man, That is a big plus in our lives. And I tell you, my father, even though they had all those arguments and everything, he would tell my mom, just stick with me, Alma, just stick with me. And she was didn't want him to go to college. He went to college anyway, and he kept saying, just stick with me, Alma, just stick with me. And I tell you, when my father got up and got the money that he needed for our family, things changed. And I can say that when my dad left here, and I was wondering, Dad, what to do about the finances, and I didn't even know how much money and IRAs and CDs that my father had. He said, Dorcas, I will tell you when it's time. And so the day before he went in the coma, and I've said this before, he said, Dorcas, look under the bed. There's a box. Get the box out. Everything you need to know is in there. And my father, the man that was a giant in my life, that helped me build my school, just poured into us as children and made sure we had an education to go to school. And even though we may have had to buy, my parents would buy secondhand clothes. You all call it the thrift store, but we called them secondhand clothes in those days. We would have to go there and get our clothes from there, and you could buy a skirt for 10 cents and just different things like that. And we had to eat bologna. And my sister that just died, Velma, she would make these horrible, I mean horrible hamburger sandwiches for us to take to school, because we did not have money to buy things like people, that took their lunches to school. And so what I did, I grew up and we lived in a pretty nice area, and so I would go to school, and it was time for lunch, and we had sack lunch. We had them brown paper bags, and the kids that I knew, they had lunch pails and had Barbie on it and just all kind of stuff. And here we come, these poor kids with these lunch bags and these horrible hamburger sandwiches that my sister would make, and she just made them things in these big old clunks of hamburger, and we would then put mayonnaise on them and bread, and that's all we had. And so when I would go to school and I would be sitting up there looking at all these other people, and they got Hostess Twinkie and fruit and all kind of chips and everything, and I'm like, huh. And so I said, my mommy, I just be lying. I said, my mommy, she forgot again. And they would say, Dorcas, what did she forget? I said, she forgot to put my Hostess Twinkie in the lunch bag. Couldn't say lunch box because we didn't have one. And they would say, well, Dorcas, you could have one of mine. Okay. They would give me one of their. We did not have no Hostess Twinkie. And we never ate in the cafeteria but maybe once a year. But I'm telling you, the struggle sometimes of parents just trying to make it will cause a lot of times conflict in the family. But the family that stays together and prays together and keep on walking toward God, no matter what's going on in their lives, man, that's a big plus to God. And that's what I see with my parents, and they kept on walking toward God. And so when my dad died, and I looked under the bed, and there was the box, and I mean, my dad left my mom well off. And every piece of paper that I picked up out of that box that he left had his name and my mom's name. There was nothing that had to be whatever you call that stuff, where you got to go and find out, can you do this, that, and the other. Everything had my mom's name and my dad's name on it, and his pension, just everything that he had worked hard for, he left it to my mom. And I'm saying this, sometimes that we looking at our parents and we're looking at the imperfection, but I want us to look at the love that they really have toward us. And even if our parents didn't do right by us or have injured us in some way, in some kind of way in our heart, we need to forgive and let go. I believe that my parents have done the very best that they could. And I love my parents. I love my mom and my dad. And my dad was my hero. When we had a graduation at my school, I had asked my sister, the one that plays the piano, if she could come and sing Hero. Because I wanted my dad to know he was my hero. I mean, he was my hero because as I grew up, I seen the heart of the man that I called Daddy. I seen the heart of the man that I called Daddy. I seen who he really was. Yeah, he had a lot of things, but I seen the heart of the man. And you know, sometimes we're looking at people and we're looking at what they do, not who they are. And you say, well, if you do what you do, then that's who you are. Not necessarily. Sometimes when I sat down with my dad before he died, and he was telling me all the struggles that he went through with his father, and how that his father had abused his mother, and he was right there and he saw it, and he said he hated his father for years. And a lot of times it's learned behaviors that they've picked up, then they pass it on to us, and then we pass it on to our children, and it's like from generation to generation. But somewhere the ball needs to stop, and we need to look in and look up to God and say, God, help me. And that's what I'm doing right now. I am imperfect, but I love people from the bottom of my soul. And God knows that. And that's why I cry when I hurt people or when I think I've done something wrong. I don't just say, I get by myself and I'm like, God, what can I do to fix it? And everything that we try to fix is not fixable. It is fixable, but some people will not let you fix it. And then there's sometimes after you fix it, then what we need to do is realize, God, is this a healthy situation that I need to be in? There are healthy situations and there are situations that are not healthy. And we have to ask God and wait on an answer and allow Him to tell us what to do. So fathers are strength. They're our strength. They don't communicate to us like a mother. They don't show love to me. This is Dorcas. They don't show love like a mother because they're not a mother. They're our fathers, and they discipline us. And my dad used to say, Dorcas, and roll his eyes, and at school, and just different things. My mom would say, I'm going to tell your dad. Because she knew that if she told my dad, things were going to change. And guess what? They did. So happy Father's Day. Even if you're feeling like you're imperfect, you have a love down inside of you for your children. And even if none of your children call you on Sunday, you got to know that you are valued. You are loved. You are important. We need every man in this world that has birthed a child to understand that they are important to God and important to that child. Now, even though you may not see that child or you may not even be in that child's life, you are still valued and important. And it is important for men to understand how valuable and how much we appreciate them. And that's why when I see my mom and my dad, and no matter what they went through, they never left. They never separated. And that might not be your story. Maybe you left. Maybe you separated. For whatever reason, don't feel guilt or condemnation. Go on and let's be the best people that we can. I remember before my brother was dying, he called me one morning. I was here in Arizona. And he was crying. I said, what's wrong? He said, Dorcas, I'm just like Dad. And he was telling me some stuff that he was handling, and he was handling it wrong. And he was handling it just like Dad. And I said, but you know what, Garland? Even though you're doing it wrong, You got to try to do it right. And that's for all of us. Fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, aunties, uncles, cousins, however we do it, and we recognize, that's the key. If I can recognize, if Dorcas can recognize I've done something wrong, then that gives me the ability to try to work on my behavior that I am doing wrong. So the things that I want to say is people look at a lot of time in men, they look at what they're doing and not look at their heart. Today, I just wanted to come back and say Happy Father's Day, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. My dad is gone, but there is a lot of men that have spoken into my life. I got Dr. Young. He has been there since my sister have died, and he told me, he said, Dorcas, I'm going to be there when they close the coffin. That's my coffin. And I'm telling you, he has stepped up to the plate because he knows the loss that I've had in my life. And I value all the men that have even sent cards and called. And even though I'm not calling your name, but I appreciate the fact that you all will step up to the plate and just help women. We are the weaker vessels, whether or not we want to figure it out or believe it or not. And I appreciate hearing a man on the other end of the phone and just will show some love to me. And I appreciate every father. And even though my brother is passed and my dad is gone and my grandfather is gone, I want to say Happy Father's Day to every man that have had a child. And to my godson, everybody, Happy Father's Day. May the Lord bless you. May he keep you. May he protect you. May you have the best home that you can have. And may you correct the things that you see that you need to receive. That's why I came back today. I was not going to let this day go without making sure that I said something for Sunday. Because we will celebrate moms. Oh, yes, we will. And we should. Because they take a lot of flack. But we got to remember, the strength of the home is the father. And if you are a mother doing the role of a father, you are the strength of the home. Nobody is not important. Nobody is unappreciated. Nobody is or shouldn't be devalued because of roles. There are certain roles that have been switched. There are some men raising their children. The man, he came here, delivered my grocery, and he's crying, because his wife, after the pandemic, she left, because he wasn't making the money that he was making beforehand. So it's not always the men that are imperfect. Sometimes we as women, we're looking for things and not for love. And so it's all of us. We're all together. And we make one unit. And that unit should flow from the heart of love. I appreciate you all coming to this website, and Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. This is the roughest day for me because my dad was my giant. He was. And my brother, I loved him dearly. I did. And my mother, I loved her dearly. So when it comes to days, special days, it's important, especially if your parents are living. Please say something to them. And if your mother has been a father to you, acknowledge that. She may not be a man, but mama, you was there. And I want to come back and thank you for being there for me, with me, holding me, caring for me. This has been Dorcas Chandler at dorcasgazelle.com. Next week, or whenever I come back, we will talk about some things about weight, and I'm in physical therapy, and I told you I would talk about my QB, and I'll talk about all that next week. I just don't want to overpower that with with not recognizing the men in this world. You all are incredible. We need you. We want you. We love you. This has been Dorcas Chandler at dorcasgazelle.com. And if nobody have ever told you or told you today that they love you, I love you. You be blessed. Celebrate somebody. Please celebrate somebody. Especially if your parents are living. Do something. Call them. If you can go, go. Alrighty. Until next time. And I'm going to tell you about the QB, and I'm in physical therapy. There's a lot of things going on. Okay. God bless you. Until next time. Bye-bye.